Carl, Chris is really well thought of around the country right now. When did you see him make a jump between, being a good starting quarterback and being maybe one of the best in the country?
Well, he's always been a good performer for us. I think there was a point of time early last season where I really saw his confidence jump up, and he began to really challenge guys rather than play it safe. And when that happens with a kid with that kind of talent, good things are going to happen for him. And that's when he started becoming the playmaker that we hope he's going to continue to be this year.
You just have to teach him to rely on his ability?
No, it takes, yeah, I mean, partly that. It just takes time for that transition to the defensive side of the ball. And just to learn, what you can and can't do in terms of playing against certain receivers, certain guys, understanding the film and what different receivers, what keys they're giving them, things like that. And quite honestly, he had to learn to play with his big body and play with his strength. And he's a big corner, big strong corner, and he can use his strength, and he does in ways that help him.
Was he a natural defender when you first saw him, or did he have to learn how to do that?
We thought he was. I don't know if he saw himself as that, but we thought he was. He had all the skills necessary, sure.
How much of a transition is that, not getting him to buy into the system, but getting him to buy his own ability to play a side of the ball that he wasn't necessarily maybe fond of playing initially?
I don't know that we had to make him buy in. I think he jumped in right away. I think it was more a matter of him developing confidence.
Hey Carl, with Sue getting so much spotlight last year, Crick put up great numbers. Some people maybe said that he was able to operate so freely that he could see right next to him. Do you think that Crick has something to prove this year to show that last year those numbers weren't inflated by playing with Sue?
No. I don't think Jared Crick has anything to prove. He's got a job to do within the system. His numbers were not, he understands football, and you hear that all the time. Well, his numbers were inflated because Sue was getting double teamed. Show me that on film. I mean, teams, it's very difficult for an offensive coordinator to say, okay, we're going to double team number 93 every play and then figure out how to block everybody else. That wasn't happening. Jared's going to operate within the same parameters this year as he did a year ago, and it's up to him to see what type of year he has, but he's certainly worked awfully hard at it, and I don't think he feels like he has anything to prove. I just think he continues to perfect his game and perfect his trade, and he'll be fine as long as he has the same work ethic he's shown throughout camp.
Carl, does this defense have a certain swagger to it? I mean, the confidence level, what's the attitude and focus like with them?
Not yet. I think that takes game experience. I mean, you lose one guy, the chemistry changes. I mean, it's no different at any level on any team, and I think there's a quiet confidence about him, but I think the swagger comes as you face opponent after opponent, and so I think it will come. But it's our first game week together with this specific group of guys, and I think right now the guys are really focused. The mental preparation is important at this part of the week, and so I think that's what you're seeing out there is a lot of guys really concentrating.
How tough is it, when you talked about, you obviously Western Kentucky, they got a new coaching staff and that kind of thing. I mean, preparing for them for Saturday, what's that like?
Well, I think in a typical week when you are very familiar with an opponent and you know exactly what you're going to get, I think the pressure, after the initial game planning, the pressure moves to the players to really understand the game plan. And I think in a week like this, when it's very divergent and you're not sure exactly specifically what you're going to see, I think the pressure is on the coaches to prepare the guys for any contingency. And I feel that pressure. I'm sure every coach on our staff does, because there's going to be a lot of adjustments required early. We're working on things, but I wouldn't. You just can't be surprised if nothing you've worked on is what you see, and you just got to have your kids educated enough conceptually to just make the adjustments on the fly and go.
Coach, last year, 3 or 4 days before your first game, if you can remember that feeling or that emotion or what your thought process was then compared to this year, how comparable is the defense you had last year to this year? How do you feel about your defense compared to last year at this time?
Oh, it's always the same. It's a nerve-wracking time heading into the first game. It wouldn't matter if we brought all 11 guys back. I think the emotions right now would be the same. You feel untested. You feel you're not sure how you're going to react to different situations, and obviously practices aren't perfect. There's mistakes being made, corrections being made. Guys are working hard at fixing those corrections, but until you step onto the field and call that first play and it plays out, I think the jitters will always be there.
Hey, Carl, I think you got to hear what was said about Levante David. How much playing time is he potentially in line for, and how quickly has he picked up the things?
Levante, well, what did Bo say? What am I allowed to say? No, I'm kidding. Levante's had a great camp. He's a talented young man. I said earlier in the week, he is as instinctive a football player as I've been around. He gets it, and he just, even when he's not sure, he seems to find himself in the correct position, even at times when I'm not certain that he knows that he is in the correct position, but he is, and so he has progressed very quickly because of those instincts, and he's going to be on the field. He's going to be a major cog for us, and he's going to get a lot of playing time, and he's absorbed it very well. I'm very confident. I'm not always as confident in a first-year player in the first game as I am with him. I think intellectually he gets it, and he's only going to get better. We're going to have to force him into games and give him, he's going to get better every snap he takes in a game-type situation.
Hey, Carl, you recruited him and you face him every day, I guess, in practice. What is it about Taylor Martinez's personality?
I have not faced Taylor every day at practice. I can't cover anybody. My knees kill me, and so I'd rather stick to the defense, honestly. I enjoyed recruiting him, though. I liked watching him play in high school.
I wanted to ask you, talk about preparing for this game. Are you guys watching a lot of Stanford tape? I mean, because that's where he was at before. I mean, what do you watch, like, when you don't really know what they're going to run?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at all the different schools from where their coaches came, and you're trying to just develop a picture of, at least the parameters in which that offense is going to operate and the schemes of all the different guys. That's difficult to do. At the same time, you're looking at Western Kentucky tape to try and get an idea about personnel. And Western Kentucky's personnel is as different as night and day from what was at Stanford, and so there's going to be some adjustment to that scheme based on who's playing for them. And so you try to just gather as much information as you can. What you don't want to ever do is guess and try to say this is what they're going to be. You have to coach. That's why I said it puts a pressure on coaches to coach within a wide range of things and focus on a lot of different things where typically game plans are very convergent. This is very divergent, and you're putting a lot of trust in your players to understand all these different things they might see, and then have the ability on Saturday to, okay, this is where they are, now let's move into that area, and hopefully you've covered it, or at least introduced it at some point.
You said yes, but what do you anticipate as far as their formation, maybe their style, that philosophy? Are they going to air it out, or what do you anticipate?
I anticipate a strong running game. I do. I anticipate the ability to throw the ball. Obviously, all teams will, and to use formations in an imaginative way to try to get themselves an advantage there because of the West Coast background. But I also know, looking at some of the personnel that they've been talking about and who's playing for them, you might see a little more spread and some other one-back stuff that you didn't see at Stanford. So, again, I don't want to guess, and I don't want to make it too specific. I don't want to talk to our players in terms of specifics, more in terms of concepts and rules.
Hey, Carl, Pierre Allen was talking about when he was healthy the last time you remember, about 2 years ago, and Bo said he's had a big-time camp. Just how different do you expect him to look this year, just to the common fan, based on what he's gone through? Well,
I think it's a tribute to Pierre. He had some knee tendonitis that's bothered him for the last couple years, and then he had a couple other minor nicks and things, but he still played at a very high level. But by fixing that problem, it's not just that he feels better, it's that he was able to, for the first time really in a few years, spend the entire off season doing a lot of the things that our guys do in the weight room to get stronger in terms of speed and power. He was squatting again. He was doing the Olympics lifts. He was doing the clean power cleans, and it's no surprise that he put on that weight, and it's good weight. And he's just, I see that strength translating into explosive power on the field, and that to me is the biggest stride he's made. He made huge gains in those areas in the off season in a relatively short amount of time, 6 months. I mean, his body was just hungering for that, and then when he was able to do those lifts, he put the weight on. It was good weight. He's much stronger, more powerful. I think he's faster. I think he's always been smart, and he's always played with great intensity. So I think he's got all the tools, and the way he prepares, I think he's going to have a good season. I really do.
Coach, Crick and Sue last year were real good up front. Do you see a guy who will work well with Crick this year up front, or maybe a couple guys?
I think all of them could. I mean, I think we're way deeper than we were. I think Terrence Moore has played really well this camp. Baker Steinkuller's had a great camp, and Thaddeus Randall's had a great camp. And they're all going to play, and they're all going to make big plays for us, and they're all going to play at a high level. So I feel great about where we are up front, and probably I sleep a little better this year than I did a year ago. And everybody wants to talk about Sue, but we weren't very deep, and we would have had a couple unfortunate injuries a year ago. We'd have been in trouble, and now I don't feel that way. I feel like we've got a lot of guys who can rotate through, and we're going to be fresher and healthier, and they're all going to contribute. You may not see one guy with those kind of stats, but I expect our defensive line as a whole to not have any drop-off in terms of those statistics.
Coach, talk to me a little bit about what you've seen in terms of the motivation. You said the extra depth, and especially even after how last season ended, have you seen a difference in how the approach to the beginning of the new season?
My approach or their approach? No. I mean, truthfully, Bo talks a lot about the culture. We see it. Once that culture took over, and again, I attribute a lot of that not only to Bo and his commitment to it, but the people he hired and surrounded himself with, and our strength staff specifically. And the culture is of a very workmanlike attitude. I think our guys come every day with their lunch pail. There's not a lot of talking, not a lot of yakking, not a lot of predictions. They're just here to go to work, and I think that's what I see. And that's not very different from what I saw a year ago. And I think it's been our key to improvement, is that there has been a focus by the whole program, players and staff alike, to focus on today. And so, I don't see that changing a lot, and I hope it never changes, quite honestly.
Anything else for Carl?
With this being your third year here and the expectations never been higher for you guys, do you sense that Bo is maybe a little more stressed and has less patience for mistakes out there this year?
Yeah, because he's always been very relaxed and not a lot of stress going on. So I would say it's more this year. No, again, I mean, it's the same thing that we say. We operate in that culture where it's always high stress, and we always feel a lot of pressure, and he's always putting more pressure on us, and probably no more than we put on ourselves. But as long as you focus on today, and don't, I don't give two thoughts about what our predictions are and what people think we're going to be. All I'm worried about today is how we're going to practice this afternoon. And I think as long as you keep that attitude, it keeps the stress and all the pressure in check.